Anyway, let's shift gears here. We want to continue our ongoing coverage of the struggle to stop Cop City, this massive police training facility in Atlanta, which is now escalating. Well, of course, it's escalating, but the struggle against it is escalating as the repression continues to escalate. And we are very happy to be joined on the show as we continue to discuss by Jamie Peck. Jamie, thanks so much for being with us. Yes.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No. The pleasure is all ours, and I know you've been on tour, so thanks for being willing to join us. But you have been going to different parts of the country to promote an upcoming action in November, Block Cop City, civil disobedience around the Cop City issue. Maybe first just tell us when and where and why you chose these particular tactics.
Yeah, so it is when you just said so, November 10th to the 13th. Sorry, I literally just got back from a 4-hour drive. I have a few days at home before I go back out on tour again. So I'm a little bit tired. Yes, Veterans Day weekend. We chose this because it's a 3-day weekend, but it's not a religious holiday. No one really has to do much for it. So that's basically an extra day for people to travel and get down there. We also chose November because it was supposed to coincide with the referendum, but unfortunately the city has pushed the referendum back to March at least. So it's not going to coincide with that. But if anything, I think this highlights the fact that we need to have direct action because they are going to try to use every trick in the book to defeat us when it comes to, the democratic process. When, where, Atlanta, obviously, that's where they're trying to build this thing. And why did we choose a mass action of nonviolent civil disobedience? Well, I think, first of all, it's important to note why we didn't choose it, right? We didn't choose it as a way of separating out good protesters from bad protesters, violent from nonviolent ones, people who damage property and people who don't. We chose it because it feels strategic in this moment. Now, why is that the case? Well, the movement has been stuck in a bit of a bind where, on the one hand, more people than ever know about Cop City and oppose it, right? They had a historic campaign to get this referendum on the ballot. Over 120,000 people signed the petition. That's 1 in 5 Atlanta residents.
Wow.
And this has never happened before in the history of Atlanta. The threshold to get a referendum on the ballot is 50,000 signatures, and more than twice the number of people as voted for Mayor Andre Dickens in the last election signed this petition, and they do not want to let the people vote. So more people than ever know about it, more people than ever are opposed. However, the number of people who are willing to show up and put their bodies on the line and do direct action has been dwindling for a number of different reasons. We've been holding out for over 2 years. People are tired. The state repression has gotten so bad. I think 61 people are currently facing RICO charges. 42 people are facing domestic terrorism charges for things like being there at the music festival. Of course, unfortunately, in January, the cops murdered a protester named Forest name of Tortuguita, Manuel Terán, and their mom, Belkis Terán, has actually come from Venezuela to get justice for her child and join the movement and hasn't left ever since. So the repression has been terrible. I don't think most of these charges are going to stick. They're transparently political. Even mainstream legal experts are saying this is an absurd bit of government overreach, charging people with felony intimidation for things like flyering, but scary nonetheless. So we want a way for people to feel not necessarily safe. I don't want to pretend like this is a 100% safe activity, but to feel safer, doing embodied action again. And how are we going to do that? Well, there's safety in numbers. If we have 1,000 people doing an act of civil disobedience on the construction site, drawing on the legacy of the anti-nuclear movement, drawing on the legacy of the civil rights movement, which has deep roots and a deep legacy there in Atlanta. If the cops want to start beating people up for that, if the cops want to charge us with terrorism by the thousands for doing a Kingian act of nonviolent civil disobedience, it would cause a massive political crisis and an international outrage. So it's certainly possible that they will still try to do that, but it seems much less likely. And the state is sort of put in a bind where they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. Right? Mm-hmm. If they charge 1,000 people, including children and clergy, with terrorism, that's going to be an international outrage, and it's going to delegitimize that charge even further than it already has been. If they undercharge people, we know it's not undercharging, but if they charge them less than they have charged other people in the past for doing the exact same kind of thing, that's also going to delegitimize those charges that people are already facing.
Jamie, I'm curious if you could just briefly explain to people, like, I think sometimes this might seem like a local issue, like, oh, it's in Atlanta, it doesn't really have anything to do with me. I live in, I don't know, California, or I live in, like, the Midwest, or I live in, like, South Carolina. Why is Cop City something that everybody in the country should be concerned about, and you could even argue, like, internationally, given what it could be used for?
Yeah, for sure. So Cop City is a plan not only to train the cops of Atlanta, but to train the police from all over the country and even places as far-flung as Israel, basically everywhere that there is a militarized fascist police force enforcing, settler colonialism, enforcing racial oppression and class exploitation, which, as we know, global capitalism runs on. They're training the police from all over the place to put down the next popular uprising. How do we know this? These plans kicked into high gear in 2021. What happened in the summer of 2020? We all know what that's about. They're thinking about it in a national context, and so should we. Funnily enough, we're going on tour to recruit people for this fight. They are as well. Just the other day, the Atlanta Police Department had a recruitment event right here in New York City, and you could see ads for it on the subway because, they've been having trouble recruiting cops in Atlanta. They need police to go there and fight us, basically, in this very important choke point in the fight against both climate change, capitalist destruction of the environment, and against police terror.
I think that's such a great point, and I'm glad you raised the issue of when Cop City arose. And we've seen with the RICO charges, the conspiracy, the alleged conspiracy, I should say, dates back to the day that George Floyd was murdered, and we've seen pretty much since, I think, the summer of 2020, such an aggressive attempt by the media, by the state, to, I think, delegitimize what we saw. That millions of people took to the street with a serious critique of the police, of the state, and of prisons in so many ways, and it almost feels like so much is centered on making Cop City happen because and repressing it, the movement against it in so many ways, because they view this as a big inflection point for their attempt to erase from the historical memory what happened in 2020. And if they can corral this and cul-de-sac this, then they might be able to really hold the lid on this broader movement that's been rising in a big way across the country for several years here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think initially, as crazy as it sounds, they wanted to try to capture some of this popular anti-police energy, the same way the Democrats did or the same way the Democrats tried to do, when they kneeled in kente cloths or whatever. The first proposed name for this place was actually the Institute for Social Justice, if you can believe that. But they walked that back pretty quickly. I know. It's truth is stranger than fiction. Now they're calling it, the Public Safety Training Facility or whatever. But luckily, the activists really got out in front of it and announced Cop City to the masses for the first time. And so when people first learned about it, they learned about it as Cop City, and even the mainstream press is calling it that right now because that's what it is.
And then I guess, for everybody watching, Jamie, since you're out there recruiting people to care about this fight and even join it, what can they do to get involved?
That's a great question. So we wanted this action to have a very easy on-ramp for people who've never maybe participated in something like this before. So we're currently conducting a nationwide speaking tour. I'm doing the entire Northeast pretty much. Other people are doing other places. And those events are a really great place to meet like-minded people from your area, kind of plug in, learn more about it, start making plans to go to Atlanta. There are also going to be lots of solidarity actions all over the country if you can't make it to Atlanta. But certainly the more people, the better. And we're going to have support roles for people who, for whatever reason, aren't comfortable doing an act of civil disobedience on the construction site. There's going to be music, there's going to be concerts, there's going to be parties, there's going to be talks. It's going to be a very convivial atmosphere that will hopefully get everybody feeling the love and comradeship and excitement.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fantastic. Is there a place they can find it on the internet or social media if they're looking?
Yeah, for sure. The website is blockcopcity.org. And that has all the information you need. Soon to be, there's going to be a tab on resources as well for people who are traveling, because that's a question I've been getting a lot on these tours. You know, we're in college, we don't have any money. How do we do this? I think some churches in Atlanta are going to be opening their doors for people to stay at. So that's pretty exciting. There's usually some camping options. So yeah, people will be very well supported throughout the weekend, for sure.
No, well, and a great launch video, I have to say. So blockcopcity.org, that's the hub if you want to learn more. Jamie Peck with the Block Cop City campaign, thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thanks for having me.